Welcome back to PodX. This is me, Ayush Majithia, your host for today. Our guest for today is Natalia Mistry. Natalia Mistry is currently the CMO at Della Adventure Resorts and is playing an active role at building Della Leaders, a global community of diverse individuals who are excelling in their respective fields. I'm excited to have Natalia on this podcast, talk about entrepreneurship, mindset, hustle, challenges, and so much more. Natalia, thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Okay, so Natalia, I wanted to directly dive in, and I wanted to start off with what exactly do you play a role at Della Adventure Resorts? Like you're the CMO, but how did you reach there? And what is your day-to-day task look like?
Okay, so I started working with my dad since Della has been a family business. I actually first started off in a completely different business. So we have many like verticals under Della Group. One of them is the design vertical that I started off right after my graduation. And I always knew I wanted to do something in marketing because marketing is something like I just was so passionate about. The day I decided I'm studying marketing, I knew I'm going to have a career in marketing. So at that point, the newest business was our design business, which is high-end interior products. So I started off with the social media marketing. I obviously had a team under me. My sister had been handling the business for years. So I was under her guidance. And soon after 2 or 3 months, I realized that it's not something that I was very passionate about, not marketing per se, but marketing of that brand. So I just thought that, okay, I want to do something that does justice to both ways to me as well as the business. So I switched from that design business to the marketing of the hospitality business, which is Della Resorts and Della Adventure. It's been in the business for the last 11 years. Now I have been handling the marketing for both three of the Della brands actually for now the last 2.5 years. So that's the moment I realized that it's something I want to go ahead with. It's something I want to pursue. It's something that I want to help grow because the kind of person I am, it was very, very suited for the role it has. And keeping in mind that it's not just a brand, it's also my family business, right? So that's when it makes things different because you're going to go the extra mile. You're going to put in your 110% because there's no space for anything to go wrong, right? You treat it like it's your child, it's your baby. And I've seen for the last like 12 years, my dad, the way he's been running it. So obviously there's a lot of, like benchmarking to put it in a way. And he had to live up to obviously his name, follow his footsteps, and like help the brand grow that he's already done and now help take it to the next level.
Okay, I had two questions. I'll say the first one. So the first question is, was there like any particular situation that made you realize you didn't want to be a part of like the design? You didn't want to be in the design business, the design aspect of the business. Like, did something happen or something? What was it?
No, nothing really happened as such, but I realized like see design is something that's been in my blood because my dad's been a designer since the last 25 years, right? He's had his career from then to now and keeps going forward. But it's something I understand, it's something I'll appreciate. I obviously do have decent knowledge about it because being in the same family and my sister heads it, my dad's founded it, so there's a lot of design talks that go on, a lot of trips we make where a lot of design aspects are spoken about. But it's something that I realized I just it wasn't clicking with me, right? Like I understood it and I was fairly good at what I did, it just wasn't like making me happy. Like I couldn't envision, like when I was working this one point, I just ask myself, this is what I see myself do, in the next like maybe 5 years. And I realized that it's not something that kind of resonates with me, and I should do something that wants to keep me happy as well and not do something just because I'm good at it. And also, given that I started off very young compared to like other people, like my friends at that time were like still kind of looking for jobs and all of that. I knew I had that chance to experiment with something else and not experiment with another brand, but with one of my own family businesses. So that's when I decided to dive right into the hospitality business because that's always been, since I was a child, it's always been something that I know I want to do. I knew I had to go ahead and like take this to the next level. So yeah, personally and professionally, it kind of fit.
Yeah, but you spoke about this really amazing thing about experimenting with different things. So actually, someone else
Yeah.
gave me a similar advice, which is you should keep on experimenting with different things so that you know what you don't want to do in life. So if you try out X number of things now, if you like it, you can continue on that path. But if you don't like it now, you know that's something which you don't want to go ahead with. So that is why you should keep on experimenting.
I mean, I know a lot of people who've taken like gap years and like that, or maybe that gap year has become into like gap years. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's
Correct.
obviously like it's not something that I'll say, okay, spend 5 years doing it because that doesn't make sense. But obviously, if at the end of the 5 years you find something that's gonna help you grow in like the next like rest of your life, right? It's worth it, but it's obviously a gamble. It's a certain amount of risk you're taking. So when I experimented with another business, like, and luckily, like that was it for me. And obviously now I'm shifting from the whole hospitality business to Della Leaders, like you mentioned, which is the world's first business platform. So it's for me, it's no more an experimentation because, I'm not like 19 anymore, right? I can't be experimenting at this point, given that I'm already heading marketing for three of Della's businesses. So for me, it's going to be like a jump and obviously a very big growth in terms of my personal life and professional life. And yeah, bringing the whole business to life.
Okay, but I wanted to ask you this question, which is you've been a part of your family business, and obviously you might have different ideas than your father. So have there been any conflicts in terms of ideas, or how do you all deal with that? What happens in that?
No, not really. So the thing is, because like my boss is my father, right? So obviously, like so many ways, like we look at the like certain things, right? So when it comes to like views and like opinions and stuff like that, we're very like on the same level. But yeah, obviously sometimes if it's like just small things, like I'll be like, no, I'm confident about it. So it's not really a conflict of interest. I'll just let him know that no, okay, like I know, like I can do this, or like I know it's supposed to be done like that, like something which is very small. And he obviously has that trust in me that allows me to make my decisions. And yeah, and like unlike most bosses, he's not very pushy. He's not like he's given us complete freedom to make our own decisions, whatever is needed in terms to benefit the brand. And yeah, and how to always keep Della ahead. So there isn't really a conflict of interest that ever takes place like that should.
Correct. But okay, so in a sense, it's like you have the freedom to make mistakes, even though you might not want to. You do have the freedom of making mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I wanted to ask you this question: has there ever been any situations where you might have made these mistakes, and how would you have dealt with that then?
Nothing major per se. Like, luckily, like nothing that I have done that I couldn't kind of undo. But like, I don't know, not really. But for me, it's not like making a mistake. But sometimes if I see like another brand like putting up, like for example, a social media like a creative, right? I'll just be like, why couldn't we come up with that? So when people look at it from outside, they're just like, wow, like Della's marketing is so good, the branding is so good, the social media is killing it. But it's always like when you're comparing yourself to like someone better, so I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but yeah, there's always like that thing in my head that, oh, you could have done it better, right?
Yeah, I always have that kind of thing. So I don't know if it's good or bad, which is sometimes I feel it's really good for me because it helps me improvise. Whenever I see other people of my age, I kind of analyze the content that they are putting out, what is working out really for them, why I'm not getting views, why they are getting views, and all that stuff. At some point, I do feel I'm comparing myself, and I do feel a sense of imposter syndrome, I would say. But then at other times, I also feel that while doing this whole analysis, I can know what is working and what is not going to work.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense, especially with people our age, right? Like, so many times it's not even like comparing, but you're just like, oh shit, like, why didn't I think of that in this way,
Correct.
right? Because I'm sure there are people out there who will be comparing themselves to us, like looking at our products, looking at like our ideas or our marketing stuff and being like, why couldn't we do it in the way Ayush or like Della did it, right? So I think it's always
Correct.
like both ways.
Correct. But I wanted to ask you this, while starting out very early, you got into the business very early. So what were some challenges you faced while oh, okay, I'll actually ask you two questions. What were some challenges you faced while starting out early? And what would be your advice for today's teenagers, maybe probably who are 16, 17, 18, 19?
Um, I would advise them to jot down what it is that they exactly like, right? Because when you're in school, you don't know there are so many other like career options out there. Like when I was in school, I really didn't think marketing was like a proper professional career, right? Because you're so like you're molded into thinking like, okay, either you're going to do something got to do with science, you're going to do something got to do with math or with arts. Like there was nothing in the middle. So that's when I got out of school, and after college, I realized that okay, marketing is actually a full blown like career, right? It's like the biggest industry at this point because all businesses require marketing, so it's something
Correct.
that was very, very important. And yeah, I did do a lot of research then. I did find out that okay, in marketing, what are the other options? Because marketing is such a broad like term, right? So there's so many like job descriptions even under marketing that are very, very, very well defined. So there's like people don't know a lot about, like they just assume that okay, if you're into marketing, your like specialization lies in ads, but that's not true. Like under marketing also there's like digital marketing, and under digital marketing there's just like 10 more, 30 more branches, right? So I would advise people, especially like kids at that age when you're like 15, 16, and that's when people tend to be the most confused about what next. Like after school, what do you want to do, right? Which university or like which college, and what do you want to take up, because that's going to determine the next, the rest of your life, not even the next few years, because that's going to define where you end up eventually. So I would tell them to start just jotting down what it is that they like, because so many times you don't know what exactly it is that clicks. Like you can't name what you want to become or what you want to get into, but you can start jotting down like at least like your likes or dislikes, like personality, right? Like if you know okay, you're someone who's not great at science, right? So no shit, you're not gonna like land up wanting a profession like a doctor or someone like a medical professional. You're not gonna choose that. So there are just things that like you're very good at. So for me, I always knew that I would have like a job, like a career which lies in like a very high like social environment, right? Something that has like got to do with a lot of like designing to a certain extent, and like events, like a lot of glamour. And that's when I started getting attracted to the whole wedding space. And also because I'm such a people's person, I realized that, okay, hospitality, like number one, your requirement is to be a very, very big people's person, right? And very, very, very social. And that's when I
Correct.
realized that, okay, this is something that's fitting in with me. Like, I love meeting new people. I love attending events. I love hosting events. I love planning everything from right from the decor to the food, the beverage, everything, like the color of everything, the whole theme, the kind of people you need to invite, because it gets very, very, very specific, and obviously like planning people's getaways, planning people's birthdays, the celebrations. So that is something that I've always known I was good at, because it started very young for me, just doing it for my family and then like few of my best friends. And I realized, okay, this is something that people actually do like as a career, right? Because hospitality is very, very, very vast. There's a lot more than just like, selling rooms at the end of the day. Like you have to be on top. There's a lot of competition out there. Like right now, if you're planning your summer break, every hotel is just announcing like book your summer with us. How do we do it differently, right? So coming up with a lot of campaign ideas, knowing whatever's trending. Because I head marketing, like I need to be on top of everything, right? From social media to like all the ads that go up, all the branding on ground, which is super, super, super important. Like the smallest of things, the biggest of things, curating like new menus in all like five of our multi cuisine restaurants, creating a new beverage menu, like getting the right people, right? Even in terms of like employees, like constantly looking for people to join the organization who will actually add value and, help it grow and put Della on the mark.
Correct. Yeah, I think like you said, writing it down, figuring out what you want is like a great idea. So I'll tell you this. I had a similar story. I scored very good in science in 10th, and I've scored pretty good in 11th and 12th also. And I realized that I can score well in science, but I don't like science. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah, that
enjoy the subject. It's just that I can understand it really well. And that's when I realized that this is not something which I would be happy taking up as a career. Because like I even told you before in the call, my interest has always been to incline towards business and entrepreneurship. Those are the kind of books that I read, the articles that I read. And that's when I realized that this is something which I don't want to continue in. And probably now post 12th, I'm applying somewhere for a BBA or a degree in economics or something like that. Because, and like you said, I actually even jotted down everything. I jotted down what were my strengths, what did I like, and is it something which I enjoyed, and then combined it and all and tried to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And that's when I realized that science is not something which I want to take ahead in life.
yeah, there are like two kinds of people, right? Like people one side just like we know what we want to do. Like people from school have known like okay, they exactly know what they want to do, and that's why they opt for like certain subjects and they like start learning it and studying it and just like getting the best marks in it because they have this whole like future plan laid out either by their parents or because people that young clearly don't know what a life plan is, right? But there are certain people that I had met in school who knew exactly what it is they were going to do, like which year were they going to do the undergrad, which are they going to do the masters, which company are they going to work in, like they had it all laid out, right? And there are people on the other end, like, and I was one of them and I had no idea because I always knew I had to come back to my family business, right? So during my undergrad, we were offered internships, which are compulsory, and that's the reason why I did it. And I have worked in two ad agencies for a month each in different years. And I think that also kind of helped me know that okay, this is me getting ready for the professional environment, right? So what I learned there are the mistakes that just observing like work environment, right? Like the kind of work that goes in ad agencies. Because now when I'm hiring like ad agencies to work with me as a part of Della, right? As Della as a client, I know okay what goes on back end on their end because I've been there. Like I was actually interning at these places. So I know like what's the kind of like scope of work, what are the timelines, what are the contracts, what's the budget. So that's what helped me know a lot of things. So when I entered, like I just started working for like in Della, and it was something which was brand new because we're a very, very high functioning, like high performing organization, right? So whoever joins new, we tell them that okay, it's not like a 9 to 5 job, that it's not one of those things like you're when you're here, you're giving it 100%. And sometimes if you have to stay back to like work with us to like 10, 11, 12 a.m., it's just expected out of you. Like it goes without saying, it's not going to be mentioned to you in your interview. And that's when you kind of know the kind of caliber of people that we have with us, right? So many people in the organization. In fact, I think more than half of them have stayed with us over the last 10 years. So there's
Wow.
something that we are, yeah, so something that we are doing right. And obviously seeing the way my dad's been leading them, right? Seeing the kind of boss he is, seeing the way his employees are like constantly appreciating him and like putting their 110% effort for him, for the company. And that's the kind of leader you want to be, right? Because when you learn management styles, you learn leadership skills, it's obviously looking at him. So that's the kind of person like I want to be, my sister wants, and brother wants to be, because eventually we're going to lead teams on our own, which is already happening currently, right? So all
Correct.
of that completely got down from him.
But okay, so what are some tips or okay, what are some things that you learned about leadership from your father that you imply on while you're working with teams who are under you?
So one is to never force people to do something. Like you can't demand them being like, unlike most people, right? Most of the bosses there are just like, no, like we want you to do this for us because you're our employee, right? We
Wait,
don't
could I
want, we
just
don't,
interrupt?
yeah.
Okay, if they don't do it that way, then how do you get them to do the work?
So obviously forming a kind of rapport with your team, right? Especially with the teams that you work on a day-to-day basis. So we've always learned from that it's not like an ownership driven organization, right? Like we're not gonna be like, okay, we are the owners, so listen to us. Like you better listen to us. It's not very like authoritative. It's none of that. We try to develop a very, very good equation with all the people, and they see us working day in and day out, right? So looking at us putting that kind of effort, they obviously don't want to help. So when we tell them like, no, like this, I'm not telling you to do this, like, it's not an instruction, but it's something that I need your help with. because at the end of the day, the people who are with you are also going to grow, right? And that's what we do. Like when you take care of your people, right, they also put in a lot more rather than just having a very, very professional relationship. So
Correct.
that's not how we operate. We like to make everyone grow in our organization, especially those who make that genuine effort, right? Who put the company first. That's when you know you're doing something right.
No, I think it's really great. I even saw, I actually told you this also. I saw your father's interview with Beer Biceps, and that had completely blown me away. I really love the way he talks, his personality, the way he speaks out, his skills are really amazing. And I was actually going through certain reviews online. And, like you said, if the boss is working constantly, then the employees feel like working. And that is why Della has a lot of positive reviews that I've seen. And it actually reflects about the organization. So I think that's a very, very great job which you all are doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to ask you this. You started working at a very young age, correct? So that whole hustle thing, like even I've seen you now, we are recording this podcast actually very late because you're constantly working, you're hustling and all that stuff, even though you had everything. Right. A lot of people tell you that you spoke about this, that a lot of people tell you had everything on a platter, but people don't understand that you also have to work and there's a whole hustle mentality behind it. So if you could tell that part, your experience
Yeah.
with hustle.
So when you're saying hustle right now, like people who think I'm hustling, like for me, because we're always comparing ourselves, like, to dad, right? So when we see him like hustle, 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 then it just like makes me feel like, okay, I'm not even doing like 10% of the hustle that he is. It just bounds to happen. Like you don't want to compare, but at the back of your head, it's just like, okay, like I am not doing enough. Like I'm doing 10% of what he is doing. So I don't know. I don't think I would like use the word hustle because I still think there's a long, long, long way to go. But yeah, like I told you, when you see people around you, right, working day in and day out, that's when you're like, okay, if like they can do it, why can't I? So for me, it wasn't like it was told to me, but it's because I was brought up looking at like even before I joined work, right? My dad childhood, like I used to see the way dad used to work and the kind of like long hours used to put in at office and so many times like miss important dates because work just had to be done, right? So that's when you know, like, okay, when you're working on something, like you have to be 100% dedicated and 100% committed and put that first. So for me, it was like, I feel like there's still a long way to go because I see it very differently. But yeah, from someone who sees it like as an outside perspective, right? I have a lot of friends who have like particular timings for work and they get off work like super, super, super early. And I'm just not able to meet them and like commit to a plan, like which is like early evening, late evening, because we work like till very late at night. Right. So these are small things that, okay, you want to like put in effort, you have to get something done, you're working on a project. And because we're always expanding, there's just always that we're constantly working on, right? So it's not one job, but so many times it's like multiple businesses that you're looking into. So that is what day to day, like now I'm being occupied with because I told you I've already shifted from one business to another and
Correct.
I was handling three of the hospitality divisions. And now I'm going to go on to, I'm moving to New York. So we spoke about that. I'm going to be moving with my sister, my brother, and I. So we're going to be expanding DLC, which is Della Leaders Club, from US, starting with New York. And then we're going to be expanding to LA, to like Boston, Houston, Chicago. So that is our aim. So this is going to be something which is very, very, very like exciting, something which is obviously going to be a very big change in all three of our lives, but it's the biggest thing that's ever to happen to us because we know like if three of us are there, it's going to be so much better and easier for DLC to expand within US, right? When we're setting up an entire base there.
Correct. Okay, I wanted to ask you this counter question. For you told me that you had this work ethic because you always saw people around you working. But let's say for someone who has not been in that environment or who has things kind of like, who doesn't take it, who takes things a bit easier, how would you suggest that they develop that work ethic?
See, to each their own, to be honest. Like earlier, like if someone would to tell me that, okay, you have to work like 8+ hours in a day, I would just be like, okay, that's sounding a bit too absurd. Like, how can you put in like 9, 10 hours at work every single day, 6 days a week? But now, because like I know what goes on, right? Like at work. So I know like leaving is not an option. And even if it's an option, you don't want to do it, right? You want to be there, you want to put in all those hours because that's when your productivity like pays off, right? But there are certain people, like if you're the kind of person who wants a very, very like steady, like time to time, 9 to 5 p.m. kind of a job, then go for that. Just be honest to yourself and say, find a job that fits with your personality and your personality fits in with the job. Like it's a combination of both, it goes both ways. So I would really advise people to kind of figure what it is that they want to do. And so many times, like, yeah, you can't imagine yourself working like round the clock. But when you find the right job and the right, not just the job, right? It's the entire work environment. Like you need to have a really great boss, you need to have a really great team, you need to have all that support, like emotional support, like work support. There are so many like aspects that kind of just, and yeah, if there's a project that you have to stay back and finish and work late with your like boss and teams and do, then yeah, there are like you have to do that at times. Like it's not like it's promise it's going to be there every day. So kind of find the right job that fits in with you, and you can also kind of justify and be honest to yourself.
So it's like finding what you're passionate about and working towards it. But I wanted to ask you this question, which is, have you ever felt that sometimes, not within the team, but someone external would have downgraded your work? Because I'll tell you this, a lot of times I've faced this where people have come and they've downgraded my work. They're like, oh, it's so easy to do what you do or whatever and all that stuff. And I don't feel very comfortable about it because even when I'm reaching out to people, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes many days. It's a long process. Sometimes I have to send them long emails. I will call them up, then I will follow through. Some of them say, please get back 6 months later and all that stuff. And then someone just coming and saying that it's very easy and all and downgrading it or making it seem like, um, you know, uh, it's not worth what I did. Like they could do it easier or better or something like that. I feel very uncomfortable with that. So have you had that situation and from the outside the organization, and how have you dealt with it if you've been in that?
um yes and no, because obviously like no one has told me this to my face. But yeah, like obviously how it is, like people talk and sometimes you get to know like via, right? Like someone said this, and it could be a known person, it could be unknown, right? And it's so many times when it's unknown, there are so many people that you don't know but who must have said so much more that has never made it to you, right? So I'm pretty sure like people have been like have said that in the past, currently saying it, and will always say it, right? Because you don't know what goes on behind doors, right? You're not there making things happen. Like people will just assume like, oh, it's all handed down to you in a platter, right? Like it's a ready organization, clear foundation. Like there's no like starting up phase. You don't have to put in all that extra effort. And there's so many things. Like, yeah, there are some people, like so many times when you're going like hunting for a job, right? You're just going from like one place to one place to one place and like applying 20 places together, just hoping you get like one call back, right? From an organization or an agency or company in any field. So I know that it's been like I have had it easy in that sense that I didn't have to kind of apply for a job. But here it's even worse, like because it's my family business, right? So that's all the more like pressurizing having to perform. Tomorrow, when you start a job somewhere and you're not performing, it's easy for you to quit and like look for other jobs. And then if you're not doing well there, you don't like it there, you quit and go to like a third place, a fourth place, a fifth place. So there are people who keep switching companies like every few months, right? They don't even make it past a year. So I know for me that's not an option, like I'm not gonna like quit and go apply somewhere else, like because it's your family business. Like even when things get hard, like quitting is not an option. So I would advise people like there are like times when you're, especially when you're setting up something new, it will get hard. Like you will have a long work hours, you'll have like crazy phone calls and emails and like a lot of coordination. But if you know you have a vision that you want to get through with it, you want to go ahead and you want to make it happen, you only have two options, like either you quit or like push yourself as much as you can and get done with it, because that feeling you get is really, really great.
I wanted to add another thing which you spoke about in the family business. Like you said, there's no option of quitting or anything. It's exactly like that. Like, you're the last line of defense. If everything falls off, you'll still have to be standing and holding the structure together at the end of the day. So, and that is a pressure which people in jobs won't have to face. If the whole company falls, they can just go and find another job or something, while you will have the pressure of taking care of the whole structure and holding it together at that point.
So that's when I think it's very important to have good and bad times both.
Correct. I wanted to ask you this another part, which is, being a woman in business, is it difficult?
Obviously it is. I mean, there are difficulty levels. It goes like what someone else might be going through, I'm not. What I'm going through, some a third person might not, right? So definitely, yes, it is difficult in many ways. But like in my case, it's more like, not like, oh, I'm a woman, I can't do it, but like, oh, I'm too young, right? Like so many times when we were having the talk about the whole wedding thing, right? So when I get like calls for like people who are interested in planning their wedding at Della, it's like when I speak to them on call and we like set up a meeting date and I give them all the information, it's like a proper conversation. And then they come to like office and we meet in person, right? And their first impression of me is just like, oh, okay, like you're Natalia. And I was just like, yeah, sorry, why? And they're like, oh no, we're expecting someone like way older. And like some have even told me like straight out, we didn't expect you to look like this. And then I'm just like you want to ask them so many questions, but you can't, right? Like, so you don't know
Correct.
how to ask them, and you're just like trying to like be as polite as you can, because at the end of the day, they are your clients, right? But that's when you start questioning yourself that, okay, like this is happening a lot, right? Like people don't like, maybe like someone don't like look at it as a good thing that I'm doing it so well over a call, right? That they're expecting someone who's like much, much, much older and like very experienced and like super, super mature, because it comes with the territory, right? Like for me, when so many times I'm going for these events, right, which is filled with like wedding planners and event organizers and all these like major wedding companies, there is nobody my age, like literally zero, because this industry is just dominated by, all these companies which are run by like founders and like CEOs and like MDs who are all like 30s and 40s, right? So when you see your 20 something coming and like winning an award for the organization, that's when they start like questioning everything and taking it seriously. Otherwise, you just assume that you're just there for like namesake. But when they start dealing with me professionally, they start to realize that, okay, I'm actually value adding, right? Like this is a serious career for me. Like, and I'm hands on doing it. It's not like I'm passing it down to like my juniors down the line. Like so many times with couples, right? The ones whose weddings are like I fix up at Della, we close the whole thing. And like the whole decor aspect is not like something that comes with it, right? Like my job is to just sell Della as their wedding venue, give them the best services, make sure their F&B, because that comes under us. So the venues, the rooms, and the F&B is what I handle, what Della handles, and everything else, right from the entertainment to the decor, to their coordination, transfer travel is completely outsourced to whoever they want, right? Like whoever the bride and groom decide to go ahead with as a wedding planner, they take care of all the needs. But so many times I'm the one, like till now, whichever bride I've dealt with in the past, right? Like whoever's done a wedding in Dara, I've always gotten involved with their decor, right? Something that I didn't have to do. And I will still continue. It's something I'm passionate about, because at the end of the day, I want to tell them that, okay, I'm not here just for the money. Like that's why we are so different from so many other like hotels and venues out there, because they just give you what they're supposed to give you. They charge for it and they leave you there. And the rest of it is to be handled by the wedding planner. I don't want to do that. Like we've never done that. We've always gone the extra mile, like be it for our wedding clients, be it for all the corporates, be it for just a regular guest, the friends, family, individuals who just walk in. we make sure like every demand is answered, right? We don't let them be like,
Correct.
tell them, okay, now you book the room, we're letting you be. You're like, okay, your wedding venue is fixed. Like, I don't want to do your decor. Why should I do it? Right? So I don't do any of that. But at the same time, I do get involved with like people who are my clients, because when you speak to them, you're planning like such an important day in their lives, like the most important day, in fact. So you want to be there for them. And that is why so many of them, like all these families who've done weddings at Della in the last, 11 years, multiple weddings from the same family have happened because they've been so comfortable with the hospitality and the weddings just gone so great. They make sure. So most of our weddings come just through word of mouth. Like they know how much care and how much passion like we have for them and like for their event. So yeah.
Correct. Okay, I wanted to ask you this question, which is another part, which is what would be your advice for anyone who is going to join their family or business or is very new to their family business, or anyone who's joining a family business in general?
Um, I would suggest to like have a talk before you start. Don't just like one day show up at work, right? Or be like, okay, I'm coming to work tomorrow. Define what your role is going to be. Like, obviously, you can't on your day one, you can't just handle multiple things together. It takes time, but there's so much you learn, right? And the way you learn on the job is something that you just cannot learn anywhere. So you'll only grow from there. So when you start with something basic, start small. I would say do something that is justified. So at the same time, like not just do like basic like internship work, which is like research and all, but actually start with something that fascinates you, right? Because when you know, like, okay, like how I started off with social media, because it's something I know I'm good at. I started doing that, and once I was confident, once I could just overlook it and not do the day to day bit, I still overlook it, but I moved on to something else and I took something else under me. So that's the only thing you'll know when you go step by step. So don't start like telling yourself that okay, I'm going to do like 10 things today, or like I'm going to finish this project like in a month, right? Like it doesn't work like that. So start small, like don't like be very confident that you're going to get things done and like okay, on your day one of work you're going to know like what to do, how to do, when to do. Like that does not happen. So discuss everything, have like a whole talk about it, if either with your parents, like your dad, your mom, or your sibling who works, and tell them, okay, like this is what I'm like, I think I want to do. Guide me. How do I start? Right? Like who are the right teams for it and how has it been done in the past? Because that's very important. So many times like you don't want to just come and start like interrupting things, like being disruptive, right? So if you know that okay, you're confident and you know that your idea might be better, or there's a better way to do something that's not been done, because so many times in family businesses, like it's the same like process and same procedure of doing things for the last few years. So obviously you can't just enter and kind of disrupt the whole thing. So take it easy, take it step by step, sort it out, and like talk out a lot. So like you can talk out your differences. You can talk out what to do, when to do, right? Like if you say, okay, you have like you have wedding 10 projects like in this year, for example, or like in this month, let me kind of take over one and see what I can do with it. And if you're not done with that deadline, like in a month or 2 months, and you're not being able to justify handling that project, like turning over that project and finishing it in a month or 2 months, and like if it exceeds your deadline, then you know, like, okay, there's a certain amount of risk, but you need to start very, very small and give yourself realistic deadlines for whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting part, giving yourself realistic deadlines. Like a lot of times, I'm not even in business, but I'm talking in general. We always tell ourselves that we'll try to complete this in X amount of days. And we always overestimate the amount of work which we can do, which is not how it usually ends up. Like even while studying, when I'm making a schedule, I will always be like, okay, I'll complete one chapter a day. I will do it in these many days and all. It never happens. Usually a chapter would take around 2 or 3 days for me. So yeah, like you said, not to give it the right amount of time that is needed. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask you another aspect, which is how do you think one should find their purpose? Like you found your purpose later on, you realize that your purpose was more into joining the family business and growing it. So how would be for other people? What would be a suggestion for finding one's purpose?
I feel like we're constantly, like, everyone at any given point in time is still searching for that, for their purpose, right? It's not like, okay, I decide today, like, what my purpose is. And, like, maybe 10 years down the line, my purpose might be something else. Because you also grow a lot more. Like, you get to understand things better, your perspective on so many things in life changes. So for me, my purpose, it wasn't like told to me, like, as each person has their own purpose, right? And there's no moment where like, okay, like now, like, I think I'll get to know my purpose. It's not like that. There's certain things in life and certain points in life that you kind of realize that, okay, I want to do this. So recently, I don't know if you know this, we hosted kids from Jevakil Foundation, which is basically a foundation that helps a lot of like physically challenged kids and like mentally challenged kids, and helps them in like their day to day, like, because they don't have that um they don't have that whole advantage of studying in like a regular school, right? So these guys, I found out about them on social media, and when I saw the post, like, it just touched my heart. I knew like I had to do something. Like, I just had tears and I couldn't help it, so I spoke to my dad about it, and I was just like, I don't want to cry like for any other reason. I just want to cry because I want to help them. I want to do something for them. I want to make them happy. Right. And that's when he told me, he was like, let's host the entire school at Della Adventure Park, which is India's largest extreme adventure park. It has 50 plus activities, which is still on top. Like in all these years, a lot of people have tried to come up with their own adventure sports and like just like places to like do these kind of activities, and no one's been able to sustain it. Right. So for us, till date, we're always sold, but we knew like this is something that we just had to do out of goodness of our own hearts. It wasn't like for any PR purposes. It wasn't like a CSR initiative. It wasn't a business related thing at all. It was just purely and genuinely from the heart, right? So I got this whole thing organized that we hosted around 200-300 kids plus their families, their caretakers, the organization, like volunteers, the teachers. And we had this whole amazing day planned out from them, where they came in the morning, and a lot of them obviously couldn't do like certain activities, right? So with the organization, the volunteers and I, we sat down and we made a whole grouping list that, okay, certain kids cannot do certain activities. So we had my entire adventure team take an off from that day, right? Like we didn't let any of our guests come in on that particular day because we blocked the entire park just for these kids. We planned a whole itinerary from them from like morning to evening. We had this whole lunch spread organized. We had dancing. We had like resorts, singers. So we had a lot of like entertainment for them. And the kind of messages, Ayush, that we got back from all their parents, like we hosted them a week ago and then we hosted them a week before that. Till date, I'm just getting forwards from their volunteers and the organizers saying the parents just cannot stop talking about y'all, because they're like, y'all have done such a small thing maybe from your end, but they're like, for them, this is the biggest thing to ever happen in their lives. Right. So
Correct.
it just, yeah.
Because exactly for them being challenged, and it's especially the way you all personalize it for each child, because each one had different needs. So I think that was a very interesting thing which you all did, which I
And
find
our
really amazing.
team went all out, like for some certain kids, right? Like if they had difficulty even walking, because some of them are very, very physically challenged, like at a very high level. So they cannot move on their own. We had this whole thing set up indoors for them where they could play all these like VR games, or like they could play something very basic, so they didn't feel left out that they couldn't do any of the physical activities, right? Because we have a lot of high adrenaline activities. So depending
Correct.
on each person's like severity case, like we can't tell them that, okay, no, you can't do this, right? So the way my team on ground has just taken care of each person, it's just been very, very heartwarming, and like we told the organization, like this is obviously going to be a complete long term association. Like whenever they want to come back, the kids, their families, were more than happy to host them and just, bring a smile to all their faces.
No, yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think those are one of the values that your dad has instilled in Della, which is why it's been so popular and has
Always,
grown
always.
over the years.
Oh yeah, always helping out people, right? So we also do run our own school. It's known as the Della ZP school. It's located in Lanavla, very, very close to Della. So where we kind of adopted all the local Adivasi and their kids, because so many of them couldn't even afford education, right? Most of them weren't even planning to send their girls to school. So we have set up an entire education system for them where we've hired the best, like ex vice principals of like very, very prominent schools in the city. Out of them, most of them are just doing it for free, right? Because who doesn't want to help out? So we've also, with a lot of other things except for education, so we've got paid for like their uniforms, their meals, their transport. Everything is just set up for them right from very, very young, like primary school till the 10th. In fact, we just like finished the first batch of 10th graders, right? The first ones to pass out. So in the day, they would go to school for a few hours, and at like in the middle, like whenever they had their breaks, we used to actually get them to Adventure Park where they were learning a lot of soft skills because they have so many activities. So as soon as we realized that, okay, these are the kids, we took them to like the park. My trainers out there have trained them so well that the goal is to now let them like be as good as someone to enter into a national level competition. It could be swimming, it could be mountain climbing, it could be cycling, right? Because we've had them develop from the best. Obviously, completely free of cost. Again, wasn't a business thing at all for us, not a CSR thing. Like we don't talk about it, like it's not, this is not even publicly mentioned. Right. It's just
Correct.
something that we wanted to do from the goodness of our hearts. And now most of these like girls, guys are just on like level with some of the most like national level players. Like they're entering into the same competitions, right? When maybe those players had more advantages of like private instructors and like trainers and like all the fancy stuff. But in the end, because of a very young age, they were trained, they were taught by the best people, given completely, free rounds of like trial, error, everything. And now they're just out there. And we're so happy that we could do that, right? So once a year, we even host like a concert, like an annual concert for them where they put on like shows. So they have that whole school experience that any other person like who's fortunate enough to have, right? So they don't feel left out.
Correct. No, I think that's very, very interesting that y'all are doing. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to read. I mean, I think y'all should make it public. I mean, y'all don't make it too public, but it would be really interesting to read more about this. Like I at least if not all these events, then maybe a few of these events. It would be good to
Yeah.
know
So
about it.
we even decided that, okay, sometimes like you want to adopt a child in the sense that you want to fund their education, right? So what we do is it's a very, very like menial amount, right, for a year. So someone who's not like met the person, but they want to help someone out, we do this whole thing wherein like you pay for their fees, right, which is hardly anything, and we send you their semester report cards. So like, okay, this child is growing and this child has like today won a prize here, or this child has got these marks in a test. Like, just very, very something that's very like attachment is so important because we don't want it to be a thing where we're just like open for donation and then you don't know what the hell is going on. So we had this whole thing where you can adopt a child's education. And I think that's something that's really nice, has a lot of scope. There are a few people who've done it, but obviously, yeah, there's scope for like a lot of people to do more.
Correct. Okay, I wanted to ask you this last question, which is what would be your last advice for anyone who is watching or listening to this podcast?
Hmm. There's a lot. I wouldn't say advice as such, like it's something that helped me. So one is obviously like it's okay if you don't know what you want to do, right? Like it's completely normal. It's fine. Like there are people who are at my age also who are still like so confused. Like they must have studied like years and years of like architecture, for example, but now they think they don't want to go ahead and do it. And that's completely okay too. So just be honest to yourself. Like I see people who having career changes in like their late 30s and 40s, but they finally found something completely opposite of which they never even thought about, that they're doing something like I hear so many like instances where there are people who studied like law, right, for like years, and they just decided they want to become a DJ. which is cool. Like it's completely up to you, because at the end of the day, you're living life for yourself. You're living life on your own terms. Like, don't give a shit about what other people might think of you, because no one's gonna be there. Like no one's checking on you to see if you're gonna be happy or not, or you're sad or not. Like that doesn't happen. So like live life on your own terms, and it's just very important to be like passionate about yourself. So go ahead with what you're vibing with. Don't do something that your parents want you to do. Right? Like, yeah, like a lot of people might not agree with this. And I don't want to tell people like, rebel against your parents and like don't listen to them and all of that. Because your parents at the end of the day do know what's good for you. But if you don't, if they want, they've thought about another whole future plan for you, and you don't want to kind of, go ahead and do that, you just need to sit down and have a very, very fair, open, honest conversation with them about why you don't want to do that thing, right? And if you don't want to do that thing, then obviously, what do you want to do, right? So if you justify with your parents, like when I told my dad, I was like, I don't want to do, like, I don't want to continue with the design business. Like, I'm obviously going to be there, like, supported 100%, but it's not something I can do day to day, because I can't vision myself doing it for the next few years, and that's when he told me, okay, that's fine, but what next? So you need to have that answer, what next? And if you're at that age where you're like 15, 16, 17, it's fine. Like take your time, even in your 20s. As long as you know, like you try out many different things. And in fact, if you don't know completely, you're just lost, you don't know what to do at all. You're just like, I don't know. Someone asking me what I want to become and you don't have an answer. Try everything possible. Like something could be as super random as maybe being a dance instructor, because that's what you're happy about, and then see how you can make it a career. Don't sit and search that, okay, which job will get me the most money, right? Money is not the only
Correct.
thing, that's the only reason, and many people tend to forget that, right? So it's not about that, it's about what makes you happy, and you're honest to yourself. If you're not vibing with something just because you've studied like to be a doctor for the last 7 years, right? Or like to be a lawyer, but you realize that after you put in those 7 years, you don't want to do this the next 7 years, you don't want to get into this field, it's okay, change, like start new, because you will go like back to the past and then thank yourself. Like if I just kept shut and I like didn't tell anyone that I don't want to do this, I want to explore, like I want to try the whole hospitality division, I wouldn't have like been happy, So now when I look back, I'm just like, thank God I spoke up, because it's not the easiest thing, but it is the right thing, and you owe it to yourself to just be honest and be happy, because that just lies in your hands.
Correct. And I think I will definitely keep this advice in mind for myself, because usually this last question is actually a personal question where I get the best of the advices, from people. That is why I always ask this question. And
It's,
I will
it's
definitely keep this advice in my mind.
I'm
Yeah.
happy, and I'll be really happy if this could even help one person, like that is why I'm so open about like my experience shares and stuff, because I know like there will be someone at some point who will be confused that I was at one point in my life, right? So I want to be like
Correct.
that hope for someone, that it's okay. Like, unlike when most people think, like, how can you not have a life plan? Like, you don't. Like, even with my education, I was supposed to be like studying in the IB board. But like right before that whole thing happened, I decided like not do IB at all as a whole. And a lot of people like, oh, how can you not do it? And like, how will you land up going to university if you don't have like a degree, like an IB diploma? And I'm just like, I have my whole education through Mumbai University, right? I have gotten into King's College, I've gotten into Warwick. I've gotten some of the best marketing schools like globally without doing IB, right? And
Correct.
thanks to my parents, yeah, because it was them actually told me, if you don't want to do all of that, because he saw my sister in her finals in her IB, and she was really, really, really struggling. Like, obviously, she's a super hard worker, super dedicated, a very, very smart person. I just knew that's not something I want to do, because I just finished with my 10th boards from ICSE, which is hard as is. I just didn't want to do that all over again, like within a year. So I knew I wanted to live my life. But yeah, education is important. So I did land up studying at in a Mumbai University, and then going ahead and doing an undergrad and getting a marketing diploma from another global institution.
Correct. Okay. Thank you so much for joining in. It was really great having you. And I really look forward to having you in the future also on this podcast.
Me too. Thanks, Ayush.